trust in you. I believe you're my healer. I believe you are all I need. Oh, yes, you are, Jesus. I believe you're my portion. I believe you're more than enough for me. Jesus, you're all I need.
Greetings. My name is Daniel Thomas. I'm a medical officer at the Kingston Public Hospital. I'm also the president of the Love March Movement, a youth Christian organization for sexual purity and the family. And I sit on the reference board of Choose Life International. I will be presenting on Alzheimer's and dementia, and it is really an honor to be able to do that. So Alzheimer's and dementia. In this presentation, we'll be looking at a number of different things, the classification of psychiatric disorders, so you can see just exactly where it falls. What is dementia? What causes it? The most common types of dementia, and what does dementia look like? Is there any treatment, and what should the church's response be? So in terms of the psychiatric disorders, we have mood disorders, psychotic disorders, personality disorders, stress disorders, anxiety disorders, and there are actually a number of other types as well, you know, less known, less common. And then there's a category called neurocognitive disorders, and that is where Alzheimer's is really the predominating one, but there are a number of disorders that fall in that category, the neurocognitive disorders. And so dementia is not a specific disease per se, but it is a term used to cover a number of different topics, a number of different impairments, rather, which relate to the impairment of the ability to remember, think, make decisions, and it interferes with the person's everyday activities. This dementia, it affects about 5 million adults as of 2014, and it's projected that nearly 14 million people globally will be affected by dementia by the year 2060. And you see in this little picture here, what happens is that there are significant changes, what we call atrophy, of significant portions of the brain. You see the healthy brain on the left side of this small picture here, and on the right side is advanced Alzheimer's. And you can see the hippocampus in particular is severely affected. But there's impairment in several, there are changes, atrophy in several areas of the brain here. And that would actually work itself out in real life in impairment in several areas, global impairment. But the causes of dementia can actually be categorized into reversible and irreversible causes. I'm specifically mentioning the reversible causes because it is important that we understand that when someone presents with the kind of symptoms that we're going to talk about that are classically associated with Alzheimer's and dementia, it could actually be something else. Actually, 10 to 15% of cases are due to a reversible cause, meaning if we pick it up early enough before there's permanent damage, proper medication can be administered to actually reverse the impact of it. So that looks like drug toxicity, alcohol or heavy metals or carbon monoxide. It could be metabolic, related to issues with the liver and the kidney. It could be trauma. An elderly person could fall and actually get a subdural hematoma, which doesn't necessarily present itself immediately after the fall, but as time progresses, there's the buildup of blood in the brain, and it causes an impairment, and the person presents with Alzheimer's/dementia type symptoms. Or it could be neurologic from a neurological process. There are several of those. An infectious process, tuberculosis, syphilis, HIV. Just to mention syphilis, it could be that as a child, the person was, unsafe out in the streets and got syphilis at that point. Probably it was subclinical, probably wasn't treated. And then later on, persons can develop neurosyphilis, which has significant impact on the cognition, the ability of the person to remember and function normally in the home setting and in society. And there are others. So the point is, it's important for us to know that these exist, okay? Nutritional deficiencies, for example, vitamin B12, say the person is vegan, been vegan for the last 60 years, and then you start to see a change in behavior. So this is why doctors take a detailed, what we call a history, and there's an examination, and that history should be quite comprehensive in this situation as well. And then more commonly, there are irreversible causes. So Alzheimer's, as I said, is the predominating one, the most common one. There's vascular dementia, right, which we'll talk about, which features pretty heavily, and then Lewy body dementia. So Alzheimer's accounts for about 65% of the dementia cases. Then the second most common is actually vascular dementia. In vascular dementia, what happens is that the patient may have diabetes or hypertension over a number of years, may not have been really taking their medications very well, and there are changes which occur in the microvasculature of the brain, the small vessels in the brain. Sometimes they can get little clots in them, or significant portions of the brain itself. You can actually have a stroke that impacts the brain. And if it happens in an area that would be responsible for the person's behavior, or the person's memory, or the person's functioning in terms of executive functioning, buttoning your clothes, etc., or your instrumental, what we call IAD as instrumental activity, the activities of daily living, paying your bills, etc. If it impacts an area that deals with that, then you would have an impact in that area, change in behavior. You would have loss of memory, the ability to function in a particular area. And so vascular dementia is quite interesting in that the normal pattern for Alzheimer's is that there's changing over a number of years, but for vascular dementia, it is boom, sudden or stepwise, right? Because you can get a boom, you have a stroke, there's a change, then boom, there's another stroke, there's another change, right? Then there's a mixed picture between a number of these, like Lewy body dementia and a vascular dementia, and there are others, all right? And in there would be the secondary causes of dementia, the reversible causes. All right, but in terms of dementia itself, the classic course of dementia is that persons in their 50s or 60s begin to recognize that they have a gradual deterioration in their functioning, or a clinician may recognize as a checkup, or the family members classically will say, wow, there's something strange, something different going on here. All right, that deterioration usually takes place over 5 to 10 years. But as I said, vascular dementia is different in that one day the person is normal, and then the next day you got to pick them up and they are like a completely different person. There's a change in their behavior. There's a change. They don't remember who you are. Like it's night and day for a vascular dementia situation. But what does dementia actually look like? I mean, I've been alluding to it this entire time. So there's impairment in a number of different areas in terms of their memory, in terms of their attention. They're not able to focus. They're distracted. Eyes darting, looking around, can't keep a conversation sometimes. There's impairment in communication, in the selection of words, and in understanding also. And persons may just say inappropriate things. There is a change in their reasoning ability and judgment and problem solving, and in visual spatial changes also. And to break that down a bit further to concrete actual things that you can look for, the person may be disoriented, meaning they might not be able to keep track now of what year it is. They don't know what year it is. Or you might find them saying that they're at the supermarket when they're really at their house. So there's disorientation in time. They don't know when it is, what time it is, morning. They might say it's morning when it's evening, or they might say it's Monday when it's Saturday. You understand? Or disorientation in place, where they forget different persons around them. Classically, persons will report that, I'm the daughter of this particular person with dementia, and they're saying that I'm somebody else, or they don't know who I am. I'm a stranger, and sometimes they find themselves running away from family members because they are saying that this person is a stranger. They're unable to recognize them, right? So impairment in their orientation, which is disorientation in time, place, or person. And they might wander away from home. Classically, persons with dementia or Alzheimer's, they just take up foot and just walk gone. And sometimes they come back, thanks be to God, but sometimes family members have to be out there looking for them because they're just walking, because they're that disoriented. They may forget how to do activities of daily living. So, you would see gradually that there's a change where they would normally be able to cook. They're not able to do that anymore. Might be able to put fork to mouth, but then soon they're unable to perform that, unable to button their clothes, things like that. Patients start to forget these normal activities of daily living. And then probably some of the scariest symptoms are those of personality changes. So they might say, wow, this guy, he was the sweetest little old man. And then all of a sudden, he's so irritable, cuss bad word. There's a dramatic change in the person's personality. This could be one explanation for that type of situation, okay? And the change can happen anyway. They could go from irritable to being sweet. Who knows, right? And then there's a change in their social interaction. So this person used to be very active in church, right? They would be at church every week. They used to be online every week. All of a sudden, you cannot find them. They used to have 5 different friends, but they don't call their friends anymore. They're not keeping up in the Zoom calls or the WhatsApp chat. You don't hear from them. There's a change in their social interactions, and that could be due to a dementia. So what is it that should be done? Well, the very first thing that we should really consider is that the 10 to 15% of persons who present with these types of symptoms have a reversible cause, meaning they need proper medical clearance and a good workup, meaning blood work, so a complete blood count, thyroid function test, liver function test, kidney function test, B12, folate, HIV test, syphilis test. We do an entire barrage of tests on our patients, connective tissue disease, collagen vascular screen, I should say, right? All of these things could potentially be the cause of the dementia. And so we have to rule out all these things. And then that also includes a CT scan. The CT scan is what would show you the image of what the brain is like. And a good radiologist would say there are no ischemic changes, meaning probably vascular dementia is not likely, or there are changes noted in the hippocampal area, meaning that the patient's memory might be impaired because they see that it is smaller than it should be for the person's age, okay? And then vascular dementia is something also that is, as was noted earlier, the second most common, and it means that because it's a vascular phenomenon, there's medication that can be administered in order to be able to alleviate symptoms. So anticoagulants or antihypertensives can be used, and that can at times stabilize the patient and some of the symptoms, sometimes even all of the symptoms, may be able to be removed. Then it's important to note that persons who have this dementia, it is traumatic for the individual as well. So the person may recognize that they no longer recognize their family members. They may be forgetting things about their own lives. Can you imagine? You cannot even remember who you are. You cannot remember things about your high school life or your college life, or the different memorable occasions of your life. You're now starting to forget them. That is depressing, right? And then you start now to forget how to do certain things that can cause you to be very anxious. And so a number of dementia patients have comorbid depression. They have comorbid anxiety. And so that means that in addition to the dementia, medical personnel have to be on the lookout for other symptoms as well. Depressive symptoms. They're withdrawn, they're crying, sad all the time, not eating, diminished energy levels, decreased appetite, on, a number of them. And then anxiety symptoms, they might have panic attacks, they might just be very worried all the time, pervasive worry, right? Or psychotic symptoms. Sometimes persons who have dementia also have psychosis on board, meaning that they're having hallucinations, they're having delusions that feel like persons are out to harm them, right? I've had patients who, the patient, can you imagine 70-odd-year-old lady jump up on the roof and running away from family members, and jump off the roof and somehow, I guess, landed on her feet and, trying to run away from family members, calling family members by different names and hallucinating, seeing things that other persons cannot see. And so if this is the case, and if there are behavioral issues in general, right, like, as I said, the irritability and the aggression, then there's a role for treatment of those particular symptoms, and anxiolytics, antidepressants, antipsychotic medication as deemed fit. And then there is donepezil, which is a medication specific to Alzheimer's dementia as well. That is an anticholinesterase medication, and that has been shown to offer some assistance to slow down the decline in cognitive functioning. Okay, so it's really a biopsychosocial model. Psychologically, there's a role for counseling. That really falls more on the family than the individual per se, because again, there's generally a difficulty with understanding things, especially new things. But the family members can benefit from psychoeducation to explain what is happening to their loved ones, so that they understand what to expect, so they understand what can be put in place to minimize any kind of issues and to ensure longevity of their family member. Where they can also be advised as it relates to the treatment, and also the checkups that they would need, and the clinical course, what to expect in terms of the patient's prognosis and the future setup of the scenario. What can the church do? I applaud this forum and this effort, because there's a need for education. The church is a powerful force in any nation, but specifically in the Jamaican context, such a powerful force for good. And the role for education of the church can be very helpful. Forums like this and having talks in the particular age group and family members, persons who are caring for elderly persons, can also benefit a lot from this information. Then the church can play a role in helping to guide patients to medical professionals for treatment. Okay, instead of being a part of the thinking that, instead of being a part of the thinking that, oh, it's just old brother senile, they might get senile, and let the person not get treatment. It's important that as soon as some of these symptoms start to come up, that the church plays a role in helping to facilitate a medical professional seeing the individual, and then also facilitating full workup. Meaning sometimes the blood work costs money if there's an effort to do it outside of the public setting. or the brain scan itself, the CT scan, the church can come alongside persons and families that have to pay for those scans to be done. And then the church can definitely offer support to families, right? Families are in need of support. Anytime there's a psychiatric disorder, the family is definitely in need of support. That support can be psychological, where pastors and community pastors can offer some level of counseling and just emotional support. And then obviously the importance of prayer is in a situation to pray for the family to really strengthen their faith and to just be there for them. And then it's important that we are sensitive to caregiver burnout as well. It is a reality. A number of persons after a period of time start to feel a bit of resentment and start to feel emotionally drained, and it's difficult. Can you imagine? You live every day of your life, every night, the person with dementia may start to, behave in an aggressive way, probably, or trying to run away from the house, and it's ongoing, it's perpetual, and it's very difficult. All right. And then there's a role for lobbying the government as well. So, for example, the donepezil, it is not available on the in the public setting. It has to be bought privately. In other words, it's not properly covered under the NHF, etc. And so that is something that the church can look at as well, right? So in summary, we see a number of things. Dementia is part of a number of psychiatric disorders that significantly impact, especially the elderly community. Millions of persons are projected to get dementia because life expectancy is actually increasing. And so an understanding of the topic is extremely important. It is important that we recognize the importance of being assessed early as possible in order to pick up anything that might actually be a reversible cause of the dementia. It's important that we understand that there is a time span associated with it, because we're not just talking about a one-off treatment, we're talking about treatment over years in the case of an irreversible situation, which is quite popular in the sense of Alzheimer's. All right, so we're talking about years of treatment. It's important that the church come alongside individuals and offer that kind of support that will help to sustain them over this journey of treatment. And the church can also look into facilities that can help to house persons like this, so that from time to time, family members can get a break. You understand? Right. So Alzheimer's, a very important topic. Thank you so much for allowing me to be able to share on it. And we encourage these kinds of discussions because the church definitely has a role to play in education, in advocacy to government, and also in individual support to families, the families and the communities that they serve. Okay, thank you.
Heal all my